Welcome back to the Midtown Madness podcast with Peter Hale and Zach Miller. We've got an extra special guest, a third co-host, if you will, for the day. The Chap Daddy himself, Carter Chapley. As you know, he covers the Billikens for Scoops with Danny Mac. He just put out a 5-part manifesto. Chapley, welcome in, buddy. Good to see you.
Thank you so much. And yes, 5 parts. 20,000 words in total of everything you need to know about the Billikens this year, in my opinion.
Apparently you saw what I do, what me and Peter do with interviews, and you thought, hey, let me put out something longer.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just about, they wanted me to do a preview, and I said, I really don't know how to do that effectively without doing so in the longest way I possibly know how to, which is to get into every minutia I can possibly imagine. So it kind of felt like I wanted to cover all my bases, but get in deep, as they say.
It's grapes of wrath type length. It really is.
That the great American novel. That's what we'll call this Billiken Manifesto.
Pete, I kind of glossed over you. How are we doing, man? How was your week?
Good, man. More of the same, not a whole lot new here. Just looking forward to the season.
Not a lot of new over there, but a lot of new to cover this week. We've got actual real life basketball happening, Billiken basketball happening that we get to talk about. And that's why Chapley's here. So, and to talk about everything else that went on in the week that was Billiken athletics. But first, we need to talk about our interview with Larry Hughes. Peter and I both geeked out heavy after Larry Hughes logged off, and I mean, just a whole lot of fun. Pete, kind of you listened to it today. I never listen to my interviews because I hate the sound of my voice. But Pete, what'd you think listening back to it today?
I thought it was actually a really good listen. I know I'm a little bit biased,
no,
but no, I'm proud of it. I think it turned out really well, and I'm definitely going to try and send it around to as many people as will listen. My parents and siblings have already listened, and some people I haven't talked to in a while. So that's exciting, and I'm going to keep sending it around. But I think it was great overall, and there were some parts that, in the moment, I was worried that either I didn't come off well or asked the question right or whatever, but I think it turned out in the end a little bit better than I expected. We always have there's always going to be a moment that gets lost in translation where you or I hesitate for a second or something like that. But that's just the nature of interviewing someone when you've got two people who are, two separate brains.
Chapley, you're the outsider here, so to speak. I'd love to get your opinion on the interview and how you thought of Larry in general.
Yeah. Larry is one of the few more high profile Billiken alum that I've never met in person. So it was really nice to hear him speak and get to know him in a way which I just hadn't had an opportunity to do so. And there were a lot of things he said that just seemed so like he was so clear and so educated on. And just when he says them, I was like, oh my God, yeah. Totally, that makes sense. And like just little things like stuff that I'd experienced, like he talked about how playing at the Dome against Illinois, like the bigger lights, like was something you never experienced. And I was like, completely, that's a thing I never knew until I went to the NCAA tournament for the first time, and it was like, no, you're totally right. These are things that and to have him teach his protege, his players, that kind of experience is so cool. So getting to able to hear him on your show is just amazing. It was so cool.
Yeah, I really am going to have to just swallow my pride and, I don't know, get really drunk and listen to the interview, all these interviews at some point, because I really spend so much time swapping back and forth between my notes and the video. And sometimes I'm just not even, and I feel bad saying this, but I'm not listening to it. So I definitely need to go back and listen eventually. One thing on the docket I think we got to talk about is a reaction that our lovely producer Kat had actually in the moment. She actually put it in the chat. is there a beef between Nelly and Larry Hughes? Because Kat was absolutely convinced in the moment, and still is, that they are having a disagreement of some sort.
So having listened to it now, it's something that I didn't really catch in the moment, because that happened, that question was part of the last 10, 12 minutes where he said, guys, I only have this much time, I got to go. And so you and I were, here's a peek behind the curtain. So Zach and I are on the chat, which we had just set up one-on-one, not so Larry is obviously not seeing it, but it was kind of like, okay, what do we ask? How do we wrap this up? So we're going back and forth kind of while he's talking. So a couple of his answers in the last 10, 15 minutes, I was not all that tuned in on at all. And so there were some nuances to it that I missed. And I did kind of miss it. He answers that question about the Nelly video, kind of saying like, oh, you guys have read some stuff on the internet or something like that. And I don't think either of us had any sense of that at all. Like I never would have thought, oh, Larry Hughes and Nelly might be in some disagreement. But what I had completely forgotten is they went in on a couple investments together, like the Skybox club and restaurant, and I think they were also trying at one point to get like this athletic complex off the ground that never really happened. And I know that the different variations have happened of that over the years. And then Brad Beal got involved later.
Was this this is the Mills Mall development, right?
I think this was like the first attempt to do something with it. And this is like over a decade ago. And so this is like shortly after he's in that video. They are around that time, they opened that Skybox place with Darius Miles and a few other people. And that kind of, it didn't go well. I think they all lost some money on that. And then, yeah, this other thing that they tried to get off the ground. So I'm wondering, like, it's not necessarily like a typical like celebrity feud kind of thing. It was just they got in on some investments that didn't work out, and probably there might be some bad blood from that or something. But once I was listening for that today, absolutely. I mean, there's something that's going on there, because yeah, he said, well, you guys have read some stuff on the internet, which we definitely had not. No. And then he said, but I'm still buddies with Murphy Lee and all the other St. Lunatics.
I don't even remember that. This is what I'm saying. Like, I know. I don't remember him.
Because at the time we're chatting up like, okay, let's wrap this up. What do we, what do we hit last? And we're both like cluelessly just going, oh, what's your buddy trying to tell you, man? Or something like that. Like just joking around. And he's probably like, you punks.
It was just so obvious because he was so generous with every one of his answers. He was like he gave so much elaboration, and then it came to Nelly and it was like, no, I mean, I'm still friends. Exactly. It was like, oh my God, okay, that's so different.
Right. Yeah. So that if people caught that, that was not our intention at all. We just cluelessly walked into that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you put it out in the notes, and then of course my chucklehead, disposition latches onto that. I'm like, yeah, let's ask about that. I love that.
Oh yeah, well, we were both all over it, thinking, well, this will be a fun, lighthearted way to finish up. Instead, we're probably reminding him of something that's a little painful.
I went out to dinner a couple nights after we recorded, and when I got back home, I watched the Dilemma music video, and Nelly, but for the record, Nelly is 6 years older, I think, than Kelly Rowland. Nelly looks 15 and she looks like 35.
Well, and Larry's always had a young looking face too. So like, and that's kind of at the, that's still in his playing career. And yeah, I mean, he's kind of a young looking guy too. But yeah, you're right.
Did you have any favorite answers, Pete, or favorite things he touched on? Like, I know we had favorite questions we asked, but like, did anything surprise you or kind of give you like, oh, okay, like Chapley said, like, oh, that's right, yeah.
The reasons that he went to SLU, I think, was kind of my favorite part. It was really all along, like since 1997, I've basically been told his brother's sick, he's single mom, he's really close with both of them. He had to stay home for them. And, people give you the impression that if it weren't for that, he'd probably be at Kansas or somewhere else, one of the other schools he named, Michigan, Syracuse. And he just made it sound like, no, like Spoon built more of a relationship with me than he didn't say that explicitly, but it came across like Spoon did the work, built a relationship with him, and they just had this incredible understanding and relationship with one another that I think I've always kind of underrated or not fully understood. And then he talks about, being able to play with all those Eagles guys as well, obviously his best friend, Tatum, and then Bonyak, Redden, and he had already known some of the other guys who were on campus as well. So I just I didn't know how strong those relationships were and how strong that pull was. So to hear him talk about how he and Spoon just understood each other and had each other's backs, I thought was awesome.
Yeah, I really felt like I could have asked that question a little bit more cut and dry too. I felt like I kind of danced around it a little nervous. It was kind of in the first quarter of that, like of the recording. So I was a little nervous broaching the subject of Justin being the specific reason why.
Yeah, I mean,
go
ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to ask Carter the same question I asked you. Any favorite things that he touched on?
I think the program as a whole needs to like cut out the clip about him talking about how important it was to get really good competition in that year, like making a good schedule, and send it out to every recruit they have. Like it was just such a winner's mentality that like kind of defined who he was in terms of like not shrinking into competition. Like we may not win every game, but we're going to compete our hardest. And I just thought that was such a inspirational little clip that I took away from it, that it was like, yeah, no, this isn't about just ego. It's about wanting to win. And that was it feels like an attribute that's missing from a lot of hoops these days.
Yeah. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, well, I was just going to piggyback off Carter and say that what stood out to me was the discussion about how, when we talked about the year before being a terrible record and being like, well, do I really want to go to the school where they sucked last year, or try to build something, or do I want to go to the big school where I'm guaranteed success, at least in the wins and losses? Because obviously Larry had success on the court, individually, but he did bring the success with him that year. So that I did really enjoy that part.
Yeah, some of the other stuff that I noticed, speaking of his mentality, he never says SLU. He always says St. Louis University, which that stood out to me.
Love that.
I noticed it during the interview, but listening to it, it was even more stark. Like so many SLU fans complain when they see our name in print as just ST period, the abbreviated form. You can almost hear him spelling the whole thing out every time, like nothing but respect for it. And he uses we a lot instead of I. It was always we, yes. Whether he's talking about him and his teammates, a lot of places where it kind of made sense for him to say I, like I went on, it was always we. So it was either him and his family, him and his, brother and mom, him and Tatum or whatever. It was always we. I noticed that about his speech patterns for sure.
We talked about, you mentioned him having a business venture with Nelly, and that reminded me of a question that I really wish I would have got a chance to ask. And we'll get to it, but I'll let you go first. What question did we not get to that maybe you were bummed about?
So there were basically, to another peek behind the curtain, we had 2 hours on the calendar with him, and we, by anything he was willing to give us, we were thrilled with. But the way that this had also kind of paced out, we were on pace to hit like basically our whole outline right at around the 2 hour mark. So we had more in his NBA career that I think would have been interesting. The way that we kind of put it in the outline was for every stop on his NBA journey, and he played for, I think, 8 teams over 13 years, if I have that right. What was kind of the overarching question in that individual place, and kind of what I noticed when I was putting it together at that particular place was, I do remember him being on a lot of losing teams that were kind of in low points in their trajectories. But I also noticed there were coaching changes basically every single place he went. And so I was kind of wondering just how he saw that, or how he thought maybe his career was defined. It's so easy to throw out a word like journeyman to anyone who doesn't spend a huge block of time with one team. Or who goes to a lot of places over their career, but that really simplifies a guy's narrative and what it's all about. We all know that he had some unfortunately timed injuries, but he hit a lot of teams at the like the worst times to play for these teams. I was just curious how he kind of saw. Yeah, I wanted to get a little more into his NBA career and see how he saw it at a high level.
Carter, is there? I know you didn't have our outline in front of you, and you still don't, unfortunately. But anything you would have asked that we didn't get into?
I mean, it's so funny because like prior to my SLU days, I knew Larry as the guy who helped bring up LeBron, and I know Peter, you talked about his
that sounds like a great reality show, by the way, bringing up Bron.
Yeah, like, and so I would have been really interested to hear about kind of that year with the Cavaliers where LeBron is a rookie, and how you handle, literally a kid at 17 being called King James, and coming out of high school in Ohio and being the biggest thing in the world, and you're the vet who's supposed to be his mentor in some way. And I know it's kind of been a meme at this point where like in that year where they went to the finals and Larry Hughes was the next best player, but like I'm kind of interested. I mean, it's one of, if not the best NBA player of all time, and you're kind of responsible for it.
So a couple of things on that point. It was like LeBron's, like, I want to say third or fourth year that he actually did go there. LeBron did have a couple seasons, but yeah. So they brought him.
See how much
in.
I know.
Well, because when LeBron showed up at Cleveland, they were just terrible. So those first couple of years were really just kind of a mess. But so then they started actually thinking, like, how do we build around him? And Larry was a guy they brought in who's a little more veteran, and who could kind of be his running mate there.
Yeah.
And I think this was actually a pretty tough time for Larry off the court, because he gets to Cleveland, and around that, I can't remember if it was right before or right after, it was when his brother died.
It was when they were in the playoffs.
Was when so he had been there for a little. So it winds up being the most tumultuous period in his life off the court. He's got that and some other stuff going on. But it's also the only place he went where they actually kind of won some games, and when he was only in the playoffs like one or two other times in his whole career. So it's this weird juxtaposition. I know he wasn't happy there at all. And when I was doing some research for the interview, found an article saying he was really happy about the trade to Chicago. And they were terrible that year. I think they wound up with under 20 wins, and that's the year they wound up with the number 1 overall pick and took Rose in the draft. So yeah,
I've learned something.
So Cleveland, I mean, yeah, and we didn't really get a chance to get into that. I don't know how much he would have said about Cleveland, because I know it was kind of a dark time for him. But it's weird that you have the place where he was really targeted by another team to be this special piece to build with, and meanwhile he's not happy there at all.
Right after the interview, I went and scoured eBay for a Larry Hughes jersey, and I was specifically looking at either Philadelphia or Cleveland. But no, my question was that recently it was announced that him and Al Harrington are going in on a cannabis dispensary in
I saw that.
Lewis.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to get into that one. I thought that would have been a kind of a fun plug for him. So I was bummed we didn't get to that. But I also need to shout out again our producer for giving me the numbers, and that his shoe deal was with N1. And the years and the terms of the contract. But I was my claim to fame in that interview was knowing that about talking to him about Welcome to Atlanta, when he was asking about.
I was so glad you were ready on that, because it was one of those things that was like, oh man, that's years behind in my head. I didn't have that ready to pull at all. That was
but
a nice poll.
yeah, I think I impressed Larry Hughes, so that'll live with me
Yeah.
for a few months.
I could see that. He was like, wow, okay, yeah,
That's like that'll put a little gas in my tank for the next month or so, and then I'll have to find something else.
Were there any other notes or questions that you got from other people, like as either in the lead up to this or afterwards, that that like SLU fans wanted to hear that we didn't get to touch on?
I really was so, and again, I do get superstitious when we do get big guests that I try not to let too many people know that we're gonna interview him until it actually starts recording. So I
Yeah.
didn't, and I didn't really talk much. I know people liked it, and or people gave me good feedback on it. I'm just, I'm not bummed that we didn't get to 2 hours, but it is, we left a little bit on the table, which is unfortunate.
One of the things people wanted to hear that I felt like we couldn't really go too far down this path was about his son, who's a high school senior and a college recruit. SLU has offered him. He is, he's got interest from a lot of schools, but the offers haven't really come in. So there are some questions about what his stature is as a recruit for next year, and whether he'll take a prep year somewhere or what his plans are. People really wanted to know about what was happening in his recruitment. Is SLU still involved? What are they saying? Now that two other guys from the area have committed to SLU for this class, is there even room for him? They had so many questions like that, and I thought there's just no way Larry's going to get into the specifics on that. So I never made that part of my outline or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that was the move. I mean, you just kind of ask how Larry's doing or Junior's doing, and just get the family aspect, the behind the scenes. I'm a behind the scenes story guy, and that was one thing that, and I want to be clear that he was great. He gave the best interview that Larry Hughes would give, like his personality. I wish he had more stories. I thought there were some stories that we could have got into, but I don't think he's a story guy. I think he's an explainer.
Yeah, I think that's become clear talking to some people now. Like there are people who really thrive on like anecdotes and like, let me give you a little color and on this guy or whatever. And then there are other people who paint in broader strokes. And like, I think Larry and Kevin Lish both kind of fall into that latter category where they're just like, I'll share details about but it's not story time at all. Whereas like, yeah, you mentioned Jeff Harris in that interview, and
God,
that dude would just wanted to tell stories all day. So
yeah,
very, very different styles.
But I mean, I guess we can tie a ribbon on the Larry Hughes interview. It was so great. And cannot thank him enough for giving as much time as he did. Yeah, Pete.
I got just a couple more things.
Sure.
You mentioned you were happy that our producer came in with the details on his shoe deal. I had completely forgotten that was a lockout year. I think probably had I remembered, I don't know, I would have wanted to ask about that, but I'm glad he got into the details of that regardless. The other thing I thought was funny was you were like, can we have the suit for the SLU, like Billiken Hall of Fame or whatever? And he said, yeah, well, his answer was more or less, yeah, basically once they hang, my jersey in the rafters. And you were like, do we need to get a viral campaign going? So I thought it was interesting that he was kind of like leaving that open, like, I wouldn't mind the jersey out there. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on, his not practicing his freshman year was something that I didn't really know a whole lot about it, but I do remember hearing at the time some of, like the typical old guy sports fans kind of complaining about when you see them warm up out there, Larry's wearing Jordans, everybody else has the team shoes on. Larry wore a different kind of warm-up top than everybody else. So he had like his individual flair on the court. And then the whole, like the practicing thing, I think it wasn't a huge media story, but it was out there a little bit. That was so there was a little bit of this narrative that I don't think was huge, but it was kind of like, he thinks he's better than everybody else. He's cocky. He's got this attitude. And talking to him now, you see that was just not it at all. And like, he was such a quiet guy at the time, and in general, he's a more introverted person, which I know has changed now that he's like in his 40s and older and has time and perspective and all that. That things like wearing the Jordans and stuff like that wasn't him being cocky. It was just like his way to kind of show out his personality a little bit in ways that he didn't do verbally, like that he didn't do, I don't know, in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole not practicing had nothing to do with thinking he's better than everybody else or saving himself for the NBA. It was just more like he knew he was beaten down. He wanted to play right now. And he and Spoon had an understanding that it was like, we only have so much in the tank and we're going to get all of it on the floor during games. And that was just fascinating to me.
Yeah. I mean, I could go forever. Like now I'm thinking about,
I'm done. I promise.
No, I know. Now I'm thinking about the practice, which leads me to Iverson, which the reverence with which he spoke about Iverson as a person.
Yeah.
Was something I didn't know. I mean, you don't get that. The narrative behind Iverson is the bowling alley fight, practice, and I mean, really nothing else. Like they kind of just were like done with him now. Like when was the last time you heard about Allen Iverson?
Yeah, well, it's always in the context of like his struggles, his post-career struggles, be it with finances or substance or whatever. He never gets talked about in a way that's like, this was one of the most exciting players to ever step on an NBA floor. And every time I see a highlight of Allen Iverson, I'm reminded like, oh, I loved watching this dude play. But yeah, you see Hughes plays less than 2 full seasons in Philadelphia, and you figure, oh, those guys, there's no way they got it. But it wasn't Iverson at all.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I just, there's so much that we could unpack. Announcement coming out of the St. Louis University Athletic Department, October 19th. It'll be, of course, as par for the course, news breaks after we record. 10/19. That'll be tomorrow if you're listening to this on Monday, October 18th. We'd love to sit here and tell you that the Billikens are going to the Big East. That's just not the case. I mean, not yet, but likely. Pete, what are we looking to hear on Tuesday?
It's going to be infrastructure week at SLU. I think they're going to announce something more of a capital project that is indeed a big announcement and really exciting and something that will be transformative for the athletic program. But I think I texted a friend a couple nights ago that it's very SLU for them to tease this announcement right at the time that Big East expansion rumors are starting to kind of buzz around on Twitter. I was like, oh, if we could only announce this like a week sooner or something like that. So people wouldn't be like, whoa, is this really going to be it? So people kind of got thrown off the trail a little bit, but this is something that's been rumored. I've heard from like 5 different people over the course of like 8 months there, because there was a capital campaign, to some of their big time donors. And there's only so many people that you can kind of raise money from before the word starts getting around a little bit. So like you said, this has not been a well-kept secret, but I am excited to see what it actually is going to look like.
Chapley, I'm gonna ask you here in a second, but first I want to say that they totally meant to team blue ball everyone with that tweet. That tweet was framed as if the announcement will be the Big East. They wrote.
Oh my gosh!
They wrote that tweet as if that was the news that was gonna be announced. But Chapley, what are you hearing? And again, this is the worst kept secret in St. Louis University athletics history in the last decade. So I don't think we're going to ruffle any feathers, like going into details that we've heard. Chapley, what are you hearing as far as things that will be included in this Shavitz Arena upgrade? And remember, this is going to affect all of athletics, all student athletes across the board. This is not basketball related specifically. So, Chap, what can you get into as far as what's going to be included?
Well, I know that they had hoped to make an announcement like this earlier in the summer.
6 months ago.
Yeah, I know they had hoped to make and I don't know for certain, but as I understand it, Ford Steward's passing played a role in their planning to announce things like this. I think what we might have seen on Tuesday would be kind of the more material aspects of that announcement, whereas the concept would have been announced earlier in the year. What we're looking at is probably a massive investment into Chaffetz Arena as an expansion. We're looking somewhere in the range of $25 to $35 million that will increase the footprint of Chaffetz Arena over the, as I understand it, the Fred Weber lot and into potentially some of the housing units over on behind the soccer stadium. So it's going to be a lot of increased gyms, gym space, weight rooms, training facilities. I've heard as much as a cafeteria, office spaces, locker rooms for each individual team, stuff like this. Now, this is all stuff that I've heard. It could be as much as all of this, or some of this, or more. But that is what I've heard. That's what I've heard, and I feel comfortable saying as much. It's a pretty significant ad, to the point where they feel like it'll make them, as you were saying, team blue balled in terms of the Big East. I think this is the kind of project they feel will make their facilities, if not the best basketball only school in the country, it's certainly in that top tier. Speaking
of blue balls, they've been satisfied over here. No, are they adding a pool in the basement?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
No, that's exciting. Pete, reaction?
I think this is great. I mean, like we talk about, I don't know, SLU fans have been talking about the Big East ever since it happened, 15 years ago or something. And now we have not on the court done enough in our main revenue sport to make ourselves an obvious add to the Big East. I think the things we have going for us is sort of the like-mindedness and similarity of the institution to the others that are in the conference. And we do add a major media market. We have very good facilities that, I'm a couple miles away from Xavier, and I know that we're at least competitive with that for sure, if not a little bit better. So I think this definitely, like Carter says, would put us up there right with the best of what they have to offer there. But yeah, I think that the best thing we can do for ourselves now is maybe a little Sweet 16 run or two here in the next couple of years, to kind of make yourself undeniable, to where even the other teams in the Big East are going, okay, I think it's time.
Yeah, I think one of the things, though, that I think still sticks in my craw is that we do have swimming on campus. So, and my joke about the pool was half serious too. Like, I'd love to see, a more athletic specific pool, if we're going to keep swimming and diving going. And our swimming and diving is not that terrible. But I'd love to SLU to get all sports back on campus. So, while this is an amazing upgrade and I'm excited, like I explained, I think that the first step should have really been bringing everything back on campus, but that may not even be feasible. So we get this, and I think it's exciting. I mean, I don't even know where else to go. Like, it's great. It's absolutely fantastic. It's gonna provide, more comforts to everyone, up and down the athletic department. So from basketball down to field hockey.
Yeah, it's great. It's, we'll see how transformative it ends up being, but this is a major play to show you're serious. We cannot compete with the arms race of big time college football when it comes to facilities. If you see some of the projects at places like, all over the SEC, basically, Northwestern, Oregon, some of what they've done recently with facilities is just otherworldly. And we don't have football. We can't do that. But that's not what we're aiming to be. So I think at the level of a non-football school, this kind of just puts us so far ahead of the rest of the conference that we're going to be an attractive place for recruits for a long time to come.
That's too far off on a tangent, but have you guys ever heard the story about how LSU doubled the size of their stadium back in like the 20s from like 12,000 to 24,000?
No.
So Death Valley essentially has dorms in it now still. So this donor, this big time politician and donor wanted to add on to the stadium, double the capacity, but they're like, the school's like, we can't earmark any donation strictly for athletics. So he donated money for them to build dorms on the sidelines of the football field, and then they built seats over top of the dorms.
That's something.
So
doesn't that surprise me?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's great.
So yeah, Shafitz, that's how we can get around some of the rules. Just I'll be the idea man. You know. But yeah, exciting stuff coming out of Midtown as far as facility upgrades go. I mean, we got soccer locker rooms opening at the end of this year, which are going to be awesome. Brian Cutterman, get me on the list for the ribbon cutting, please and thank you. Yeah,
I think this is a project that probably would have been, I don't know for sure, but probably would have been announced at the same time as that.
Yeah.
Had it all been tied together in a nice little bow for them. Just to give some context to what I was saying earlier. Like these two things probably were in the mind at the same time.
Do you think they've been still working behind the scenes to start on the project? Because obviously they announced the soccer one because they needed it to get done at a certain time.
Yeah.
Do you think they built in, like, what are they doing stuff behind the scenes to your knowledge?
I really don't know.
Okay.
I can only assume that if they had known about this kind of end goal as early as that, they probably have some tangible milestones they've hit since then. I know that the people working in the building have been stressed out about this, to say the least, in terms of their workloads. It's been an all hands on deck kind of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some very, very tangible, even as I said to someone, 3D renderings, perhaps even like design features, choices, stuff like that. I don't know that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Any last thoughts, Pete, on the expansion?
No, I'm excited. Just want to see what the announcement looks like. And, it sounds like there was some unfortunate timing involved too. Like before, when I said it's the most sleuth thing ever, it's more a signal of luck than any, failure on anyone's part. Yeah,
I do wonder as well if maybe the announcement of, or not the announcement of the Big East expansion, but the rumblings of the Big East expansion may have forced their hand to go ahead and push it up. This could be very much a flashing of the high beams to the Big East, just being like, hey, what's up, guys?
If it's not a flashing to the high beams to the Big East, it's a flashing to the rest of the country. Like it certainly is. Like there's no reason to put this kind of investment in unless you're showing you're serious about something to recruits or conferences or staff or whatever it is. But that's why you do this.
Yeah. People know I've been critical of certain decisions, but this is by far a net positive in so many ways and has me very excited. And big congrats to Chris May and his staff for raising the money and putting this together, because that's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, we have tangible men's basketball things to talk about. They have opened to practice. And they opened to practice to the fans the other night. It was a Friday afternoon. They held a scrimmage, 2 16-minute halves. It wasn't streamed, so you guys are kind of like. But what are you guys hearing out of practice? The reactions.
One thing I'm really hearing, Nesbitt can really shoot it, which is something that I knew he could do a little bit, but his numbers have never really suggested that in a setting like this, he would shoot like 80% or whatever he put in from three. So that was really impressive. And then heard really good things about some of the, the transfer guards, Jones and Williams. Obviously not a defensive showcase, but I heard Okoro was really good in one of the two scrimmages, and yeah, just little tidbits here and there on everybody, but it's they threw a lot of different lineups and looks out there, so it's hard to get a read on who the core is going to be necessarily. I think we know a few of them, but it sounds like they're gonna throw a lot of different looks at teams this year.
Chapley, what is your kind of feeling on the staff? I guess what are you hearing out of Chaffetz?
Yeah, it's hard to know exactly just based on what you see, what to take away from this. Like how serious is this? As you said, you're not getting a defensive showcase. I've been told in the past that for stuff like this, like when you get fans in for practices, guys are kind of instructed to, not try, but definitely not slide in to take the last minute charge or sell out. And your goal is to not hurt yourself in front of these kinds of, Billiken madness-esque things. So I don't blame anyone for the defensive outputs. I think what you can take away though is some of the attitudes. So you're right. I mean, Jordan Nesbitt looks awesome from three, which is, it's a practice, but he's got to hit those. So he hit them and it was great. He looks confident. He looks comfortable. That's something that you can be really happy with. Terrence Hargrove looked exciting. I thought Andre Lorenzen, as from what I'm hearing, is
he did
way more, just like in terms of how he's carrying himself, more assured, more confident, and that's the kind of guy who, that's who they thought he would be, a sharp shooting forward who knew how to play the game. And when he did that, he didn't do that last year. So you see the way guys are carrying themselves. That is what I take away most, is that there is a positivity, there is a belief. They really do feel like they're them boys, so to speak. Like they believe in themselves.
Not only did you throw in a we them boys, we've also now gone through two press conference memes. We are who they thought they were in practice.
Yeah.
Next, we're gonna be talking about playoffs. Conference, which we actually will get into when we get into soccer. Lorenzen, I thought he showed off his range along with Hargrove, Nesbitt, and Jimerson. Okoro, you're definitely right. He is massive. To quote the movie Bring It On, he puts the ass in massive. Just like getting out there, you can just tell he has French had a presence. Okuro's presence is about 3 inches bigger. And it is a noticeable 3 inches. And I'm excited to watch what I have coined as the Big O battle. And that'll be what the Oshun and Okoro matchup going forward. We do play them twice, right? Tell me we play them twice.
Yeah.
Home and away.
Thank the Lord. But we got to remember, again, it is a practice. While the scores did look really good, though, it is an offensive showcase, as you guys imagine, or as you guys said already. And also, one more thing, these guys probably practiced for 2 hours leading up to this already.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it looked like they were coming up short on some shots, it's probably because their legs are a bit worn down. But yeah, it was a great event. Free popcorn and drinks. They couldn't give me a ice water though. I had to get ice and then take it over to the fountain, which I don't care, but I just thought that just kind of point of fact. And then you could buy beer, nachos. They had pizza too, which I nearly indulged in, but abstained. Not that anybody cares about my diet. Yeah, I was excited. A lot to like with this team, man. I mean, I thought the play of the night, low key, was Yuri Collins stuffed Fred Thatch. Fred Thatch had the ball a little too low and went up for a shot, and Yuri just kind of like
Got on top of it.
Yeah, it was an impressive play. I think I heard a lot of people really liked Linson, his effort in the practice as well. So a lot to be excited about, and glad that Ford Stewin's young son got to meet the team for the first time. So that was a really a really nice moment afterwards. I unfortunately I was not around to see it, but it was nice to see on social media and whatnot.
Brought a tear to my eye.
Yes, it did. Let's talk about Jordan Goodwin. Pete, what's the news, man?
Yeah, so we just got word that he it's not like hitting the wire right now, but
wait, hold on. They're calling.
I'm just holding a long ticker tape right here. No, but in all seriousness, he did get waived by the Wizards in the past couple days, and he's going to be reporting to their G League affiliate, which isn't a huge surprise, just sort of given the size of the roster and everything, and that he didn't play in their last preseason game. Played like 3 minutes in the game before that, so I think they like him. He's still in the system. This is by no means the end of his journey, but he's just not going to make the opening day roster.
Chapley, remind us what the name of their G League affiliate is called.
They are the Capital City Go-Go's. They are the Capital City Go-Go's, and they play Windy City in Chicago twice in April. If you're looking to make that trip from St. Louis or from me in Milwaukee.
Wait, are we gonna bro down in Chicago for that game?
Well, I spoke to some of Jordan's representation yesterday, and they're optimistic that at some point this season, because he's going to spend at the very least the next 60 days with the organization to fulfill his E10 contract and get that very significant bonus that's promised to him. And they feel like if someone was to get injured along the way this season, he may be a candidate to get a 10-day deal for the Wizards, or move into one of the two-way deals, which are now taken. I know, yes, as of this afternoon, the Wizards actually picked up someone from the Lakers, like they tend to do, to fill the second two-way deal on their roster. So there was a thought at one point that he might at some point this year, because you can only play, I think it's like 40 games in the NBA on a two-way deal. You have to go back and forth, or it's so many days. They thought at some point he might, once they fulfilled a certain number on another two-way deal, move him into that role. But I think there's an above likely chance he plays in the NBA this year, and that's where I'd rather spend my money.
Yes, no, I don't know if I'd go see him play or if I'd rather get a jersey. Like, well, Pete, what's your move? You got $200 to spend. Do you buy a ticket and drive to see Jordan Goodwin play, or do you grab yourself a Goodwin Wizards jersey?
Yeah, I go see him play. I'm an experienced guy.
I'll do both. I'm
not going to wear a jersey. Yeah.
No, it's exciting to see. I also had to look up where the Windy City Bulls play, and as I thought, it was probably Sears Arena in Hoffman Estates. Just showing off my knowledge of Chicago, no big deal. So that's what's going on with Jordan Goodwin. Keep an eye out. I believe I'm going to get you guys that the Twitter handle for the Capital City Go-Go, so you can follow them. I guess it's Capital City Go-Go. That's what it is. So if you want to follow them on Twitter, definitely do that to keep up with Jordan Goodwin. Chapley, this is the reason we have you on, actually. Well, I mean, we have you on because we love you, but we brought you on because you released, as we talked earlier, your manifesto, so to speak, which is probably the most innocuous manifesto among historical manifestos.
I thought it was kind of an apt name. I wanted to call it the Chapley Journals, but someone said that sounded a little too self-involved. So the Billiken Manifesto ended up as something a little more serial killer-esque.
Well, both are kind of serial killer-esque, to be honest with you. the Chapley journals. Like oof, I shudder to think what's in those.
Toronto Raptors hot takes mostly. Team Canada soccer.
So what how did you kind of put this together? I mean, 5 parts. Part 1 released. When did you release part 1?
Oh, it's going back probably three weeks ago, and I've been doing two parts a week, save for last week, where this week will be the today will be the final part, today as in Monday. Yeah, I mean, it really just kind of started as like I wanted to do a full understanding of this team, because there's a lot to talk about. There are so many questions with this team. It's such a transitional year in the program, but yet there are so many familiar faces that it bodes talking about in both a knowledgeable and a questionable way. So it really just started with me. I just started writing. I started writing all my questions, all the things I'd want to know about this team from both an in-depth perspective and from a surface value perspective. And I just didn't stop until I felt like I didn't have any more questions. And then I reached out on social media for questions and said, okay, here's a Google form. What questions do you have about this team? And then I answered those questions. And so it ended up turning into, I think it's on Microsoft Word, it's 25 pages of reading. I mean, when I ran it by my good friend Stu Durando, he said, I don't think I've ever written more than 5 or 6 2,000 word articles in my career. And I said, well, I'm on the internet. It's a little different. You don't have inches to fill on the internet. So it really is designed for, in the end, releasing it in parts is designed for, okay, so you're a really intelligent, really informed, plugged in Billiken fan. Here are some parts for you. You don't know anything, here are some parts for you. And if you're somewhere in the middle and you just love Billiken content, here it is, all for you, all in one.
I love that attitude. I think that's what Pete and I are striving for as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and along those lines, so there's stuff that kind of, I think anybody listening to this show right now probably knows about the team in terms of, our two 4-year starters in Goodwin and French, no longer with the program. We do return a lot of familiar faces and bring some new guys in, but we're going to be a much different team, not built around them. I think people by now have kind of seen a little bit of the schedule and stuff like that. Is there anything as you were putting to get this together that kind of surprised you, either that you found or maybe an insight that you sort of came across, anything like that?
I mean, the one that I spent a lot of time trying to talk about in some of my new faces pieces of it is that, just because you're losing 2 of your all-time greatest players, that can be good for some of the guys on this team in specific. Not to take away anything that they've done in their career. Obviously, the net positives that Jordan Goodwin and Hassan French brought to this program are unimaginably good. But when you talk about, okay, so maybe a guy like Fred Thatch has a better year this year because he doesn't have to play the same role those 2 guys are playing. And he can be more of those guys and let other guys do what he was doing last year, which was being an outside threat and a tertiary guy. And so players can, you can have amazing players and still add by subtracting in a way. Like, I don't think there's any doubt that this team is going to look really, really different. And in no small part, it's because you don't have to play Jordan and Hassan 38 minutes. Now, last year, they were obviously the right guys to have out there. That's not a question. This year, it's a very different group. You can see some very exciting new things that, for every Billiken fan, that's exciting. That's a good thing to look forward to. So it's stuff like that where you kind of look back and you go, man, because I started covering the team in Jordan Hassan's freshman year, and now we're in a post Jordan and Hassan world. And it's like, the reset you have to do in thinking about the framework of how a team gets structured is what really the light bulb went off for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really, and I don't want to use brave, but I think it's a really tough reality for fans to face when you especially looking at guys like Jordan Goodwin and Hassan French, who were such darlings in the eyes of fans and such fan favorites, that it's hard to admit that maybe, it's it is a good thing. Transition's a good thing. And you know, you don't want to plateau. You know, you got to adapt and maybe change up your style of play. Yeah, it was a fun 4 years with those two. So I mean, I totally love where you're coming from there. Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, completely agree. I think of a lot of guys who um, think about how many times over the last 4 years with Goodwin and French. Obviously, defense and rebounding were not things that we really ever struggled with, but there were times where the offense really got bogged down. Either we didn't have enough shooting threats around them, or one of them would take it inside, and we'd come up empty or something like that, and you wind up with 3 offensive rebounds and 4 missed shots or something. I do think we are going to, once we kind of figure it out and once these guys click together, there's no question we're going to probably be a more fluid offensive team who shoots better from everywhere on the floor. It's probably going to be an easier team to watch for longer stretches of time. And you're right. I think there are a lot of players on the squad who are going to benefit from that.
Carter, do you want to run down kind of each part, what your people are going to find in, if they haven't gone there already? Again, go to scoopswithdannymac.com and you can find it under the SLU Billikens tab. There's going to be 5 parts. Part 5 will be released same day as this. Carter, do you want to run us down kind of give us a high level overview of what people find in each part?
Yeah, so the high level overview is a good descriptor for part 1. It's going through all of the major themes. It's going through all of the here's who's left, here's what they're doing. We talk about, where all the transfers have gone. Hassan is over in Slovenia. Jordan's now playing for the Go-Go's. We talk about what are some major themes in terms of change and adaptation and stepping into a new role. So guys, who may not have been starring players or have been able to sit in the shadows a little bit more and kind of punch in. Now we're going to be asked to do some bigger things. And what are some of those bigger things? Part 2 is the new faces. So I go through each of the new Billikens in a really in-depth way, talking about their stories. You learn some things about these guys. You talk to some of their family members and why they came to SLU, why they ended up choosing where they did. And some things we already knew. Like I source a lot of other stories that guys have done in order to create the best amalgamation of information. Part 3, I believe, I'm double checking now because I get them confused because they were not written like this initially. I had to reorganize them to make sense. Part 3 is the schedule. So I go through each and every game they're going to play this year, from exhibition games to conference play. And I talk a little bit about that, some of the key and major games, like what you're going to expect from Memphis, what you're going to expect from Auburn and Drake, what you're going to expect in the conference this year. And I think a lot of people, if anyone from the rest of A10 Twitter reads me, they might hate me a little bit, but that's kind of what you get when you talk about other people's teams in ways that they might not love. And then in part 4, I talk about some of my bolder predictions, things that I call them bold and not so bold predictions, things I expect to happen and things I think could happen. Like, for example, I think Javonte Perkins, if he is even average to his last 2 years, is going to be a first team all conference, could be player of the year. I also put out the prediction that Terrence Hargrove wins 6th man of the year. So some bold and less bold predictions. Another one I give is that I think it takes Jordan Nesbitt to conference season to really see what he's got. I think he's more of a Perkins than a Hargrove, but it takes a little while. These guys are really young, as I'm reminded time and time again. And then part 5 is records to track. So we got some guys who are coming up on some major Billiken milestones, specifically Yuri Collins and Javonte Perkins. And then they got some guys, DeAndre Jones has over 1,000 points. Rashad Williams has over 1,000 points, things to keep track on, and what they've done at their previous schools. So, and that's the 5 parts. And then of course there's a Reader's Digest, which is about, 500 words about everything you just read if you didn't read the previous 21,000 or whatever.
Any of your predictions that you how many of them did you come up with as you're writing this versus kind of things that you already had in mind?
Um, it took me a little while to write that part because a lot of it, as I said, was reorganized. And then as I was reorganizing them, I was continuing to talk to, people I trust, people I'm, connected with, and kind of reshaping what I felt based on those conversations. So I would say I think I have 7 in that article. I would say 3 of them were written, like I had 4 of them, I should say, I kind of had going into it as a prediction. 3 of them came afterwards based on kind of, just like one, like I think, Fred Thatch is going to be a real breakout player this year, if only because he's not having to play in Jordan's shadows. He can be the lead defensive player. The lane isn't going to be clogged every time he slashes to the basket anymore. And that's something I came up with only after realizing, like, oh my God, this team is going to be so much more fluid and dynamic. Who's the guy that's going to be that physical rebounding presence? The guy with the biggest vertical leap on the team, Fred Thatch.
Yeah, if he can kind of develop some of Goodwin's, ball hawk mentality and instincts, he really can eat up some offensive glass this season if he wants to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he needs to definitely improve his finishing at the rim as well. I think that's something that he's struggled with in the past. But
but the opportunity is there.
I think he's going to get so many more easier looks though. Like so many times when you're watching him go to the rim, he's going in and he's having to battle against at least 2 bodies, let alone arms blocking him, just because those teams last year, opponents knew to pack it in and they're not going to shoot. Like SLU is not a great 3-point shooting team. You don't need to spread the floor. When you have a lineup of something like one that I talked about on a previous podcast where you have like Terrence Hargrove playing the 5, and then Yuri, Javante, Fred, Gibson, and like whatever group of these guys, and you have to spread the floor out so thin just to be able to defend them. He's going to get a lot of really easy looks into the paint. I think it's going to be a lot easier for him this year.
It's funny. I turned to a friend of mine at the practice and I said, Hargrove may be an athletic Cody Ellis figure in this team, because I mean, he can play the 4 in the Atlantic 10. He's going to get bodied a little bit, but Cody Ellis wasn't exactly the strongest dude. Sorry, Cody. I mean, and he can step out and shoot the 3. I think Hargrove is a great option as a stretch 4 in that small lineup.
Yeah. They have so many different choices to go with that you can have fun. Like just at home thinking to yourself, like, what lineup are they going to go with? Oh God, well, you can go with this. I just did Terrence playing the 5, and it's not a great idea maybe, but I could think of weirder.
Verbal meme, guy and wife laying in bed. I wonder if he's thinking about other women, and what he's actually thinking about is so many lineup combinations for SLU men's basketball.
Yeah. Yeah. You could see Francis and Martin in one lineup. Could that work? Who knows?
What if we put Linson and Lorenzen in at the same time?
Right. Right.
Oh.
They'll never know who to guard. They'll have no clue.
Oh my God. It was a really great read. I mean, I hate to admit this, but I had to blow through it today at like 5 o'clock. We're recording this at 8 o'clock Central Time. So no, it's a great article. Again, go and check that out at the website Scoops with Danny Mac. And of course you can find Carter and all his hot takes on Canadian soccer, Toronto Raptors basketball, and of course Billiken basketball at Chapley Media still?
Chapley Media.
Chapley Media. Anyway, KenPom, I believe I don't know. Well, look, I'm going to admit this. These two are a lot smarter than I am. So I'm going to kind of let Pete take the wheel here and kind of just give a rundown about what was released involving KenPom. And I'll try to chime in when I feel, somewhat intelligent.
So yeah, so if I understand correctly, what KenPom has here is he's got the schedules up basically, and I believe it's last year's rank number to the left of the team name we're playing, and then he's got sort of a percentage prediction to the right of that, along with kind of a score prediction as well. You run through our schedule and realize how difficult the schedule actually is. And the thing that's scary about it is I think a lot of these teams um, are going to have better numbers next to them than this indicates. Do I have that right? Are these
These are
last
not,
year's?
these are an updated, this is this year's
Okay. So
number
this,
based
gotcha.
on his projection, which is,
Okay.
I mean, the people who tell me these things that know better than I do tell me that it usually takes about 7 games for any kind of statistical model to make any sense.
Right.
Right now, these are based on returning players and transfers who had time at other schools last year.
Yeah.
So SLU is, I believe they're currently ranked 92, which is just based on their combination. I think it's their mean of their adjusted offensive efficiency and adjusted defensive efficiency. And when you look at players who are going to have an impact on this team, like Francis Okoro and Jordan Nesbitt, they didn't have any numbers to go with. So the team doesn't really make any sense. But so when you take that with a grain of salt and you go, okay, so SLU's probably not going to be 92nd in the country in a whole lot of things, or whatever kind of combination, whatever metric you want to call it, you look down this lineup and you go, okay, so there's something wrong everywhere here. It's going to take 7 games to get any real data out of this that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So don't put a whole lot into those rank numbers yet. I mean, Belmont at 77 is laughable. That team's going to be great this season. And if we, as this predicts, if we win by 1, I would gladly take that. He's got, Memphis at 16, Auburn 28, Drake 24 or Drake 74. Those are all teams that have potential to be a little stronger than that. And then
Boston College is going to be worse than 146. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah.
Central Arkansas will be better than almost dead last.
Right. Yeah. Central Arkansas and Eastern Illinois, both in the 330s. You really don't want teams in the 300s on your schedule. Even though those are easy wins, those numbers don't help you at all.
They do nothing for you.
Right. So you hope they're a little better. Honestly, I have no idea where they'll end up. Obviously they're bottom half teams, but don't know how far down. Mercer and Illinois State, those both could be about right. I know it's kind of a transitional year for Illinois State and they had a rough season last year. So, but basically the point is this is a tough schedule and there aren't a whole lot of sure things here.
And just as we pointed out in the Larry Hughes interview, Larry Hughes would be proud of this schedule.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a player coming in wanting to be challenged, if you're Jordan Nesbitt and you think you've got NBA potential, there are going to be a lot of people seeing you play some good teams on this season. So this is a really nice. This is the toughest schedule we've had in a long time. We talked about it when it was first released, and I think it's the toughest we've had since before Majerus even. Definitely the toughest since that one year that the A10 had Xavier, Butler, Temple, all those teams. Still, I think that was 2013, still in the conference all at once. I think that's the toughest schedule we've had since the kind of Conference USA era. So this is definitely the toughest since that.
Any more we want to go over before we move on to the 11th ranked Billiken soccer team? Any basketball stuff? All right. As I said, the future top 10. Actually, we should maybe change that to the future top 10 St. Louis University Billiken men's soccer team, because they played Dayton this weekend and came away with a 2-0 win, putting Dayton at 5-7-2, 2-3 in conference. Going forward, they'll only have 1 game per weekend, which is pretty exciting. You can kind of key in on that 1 game, especially doing this podcast. It's nice. 8th minute, Betcher redirects a pass across the face of goal from Isaiah Parker and it finds the back of the net. And then in the 84th minute, Parker gets a goal of his own with an Olympico.
Unreal.
No, I mean, there are some Olympicos, and for those who don't follow soccer, and I'm sure we'll get yelled at for being wrong in some way about soccer. But an Olympico is basically when someone takes a corner kick and the ball goes directly into the net without touching anything, without being headed in or redirected in the net.
Able to do that curl in
Yes.
from outside. Yeah.
And there's some ugly Olympicos out there. This was a
Yes.
good looking Olympico.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
he just curled it right in, right where it needed to be. Goalie had no chance. It was beautiful.
I maintain that most times they're not trying to score. No, there's no way. But
way.
again, Isaiah Parker, we'll add him to the list of St. Louis athletes that are elite. If we haven't
Yeah.
already, he's just so good. I mean, Pete, what do you see from? I mean, I've gushed enough about his quickness and ability to play in tight spaces. Pete, what do you like about this kid?
Well, so he was just on that list. I think Top Drawer Soccer rated him the number 2 freshman in the country, which kind of bummed me out because I kind of want to keep the word quiet on this guy for a little while. I don't want to see any pro scouts give him any ideas. I'm selfish and I want to keep him around. I know. The point I made a few weeks ago is when he touches the ball, it just looks different. I think he's our most exciting on ball player by far. Honestly, his touches are very precise. He moves so well, so fluidly with it. He always seems to kind of have a plan. I love watching him get the ball, and his creativity in the open field is really something to marvel at. So see him do something like this too, even if, as you said, it may not have been his intent. It is pretty crazy. So he's a blast to watch, and I don't think we're going to have him around for 4 years. I think he is that good. And as he continues to kind of put it together, he's a special player with a high ceiling.
Yeah, if you're watching this team and this team looks like they're brimming with confidence, it's because they are. I had a conversation with my cousin on the team, and I won't say exactly what he said, but I mean the amount of confidence these guys have. I mean, I will say that if we have the number 2 freshman in the country on the team, we also probably have the number 1 goalkeeper in the country on this team. And again, I didn't even get into his save, his incredible reaction save from point blank. I mean, that's easily one of the top plays of the year. Kept the game 2-0, I think, if I recall correctly, or 1-0. 1-0. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a whole different game if that ball goes in the net. So Patrick Schulte has just been unbelievable for this team. You can't really say enough about what he's contributed.
It's so funny with Patrick though, because like he is so unbelievably good and has such a high pedigree for talent, but like the team is so good that they don't give him a lot of opportunities to show how good he is.
That's the weird thing about soccer in a way, is that like you could be a terrible goalie on a great team and have a great goals against average.
Yeah.
Because you only have to make 1 or 2 stops a game. So, but yeah, this team is brimming with confidence. Unfortunately, Palazzolo appeared to go down with an injury. Kalish said he had 3 or 4 cleat marks on his knee. I thought Dayton started to get a little out of hand and a little chippy as the game progressed, and I thought they might have been playing a little dirty. What did you see, guys?
Yeah, I think you tweeted that the ref needed to get it, tighten it up a little bit and get it in control. And I think that's absolutely fair.
I think anytime you get these 2 teams together and one goes down, it's Dayton SLU, and they're going to be really physical. They do it pretty much every year. Usually the officials a little bit better, I seem to recall, but I can't disagree with what you had to say in that tweet, Zach.
Going forward, they will take on George Washington on 10/23. George Washington, I believe it's at noon. George Washington comes in 3-9-2, 1-3-1 in conference. They've played a weak non-conference schedule, so this is not a very good George Washington team. Recent results, I've seen the Billikens win by 4 or more on multiple occasions. They haven't scored in the last 3 games played. They will, however, be playing George Mason on 10-20 prior to their game with Sandwich University, so that could change. They have not won since the September 25th versus Fordham. They are averaging 0.68 goals per game and giving up 1.3 goals per game. They are led in scoring by the Englishman Oscar Haynes Brown. He has 4 goals and 1 assist on the year. Billikens improve to 10-0-3 overall, 6-0-0 in conference. That is good enough for top of the table in the Atlantic 10, followed by Rhode Island in second, VCU and St. Joseph's tied in third. You've got Fordham, UMass, Duquesne, Davidson, Dayton, St. Bonaventure, George Washington, LaSalle, and George Mason is 0-5, rounding out the bottom of the league. Anything before we move on to the women's side?
Yeah, the tricky thing here is, and you don't want to overlook anybody, but the men absolutely have to take care of business at George Washington. It's a road game, and like you said, we've beaten them handily in recent years. Even if it's not 4-0, they've just got to get it done. The tricky thing is Rhode Island is that second place team. They've only got 1 loss, so the potential pitfall here is you lose that game, and all of a sudden you go from the 1 seed, the easy number 1 seed, the class of this conference, to the 2 seed with Rhode Island taking that tiebreaker. And the conference tournament this year is all on the campus sites of the higher seeds. So SLU could be playing its last road game potentially at George Washington, this coming weekend. They just need to also then come back to home and take care of business against Rhode Island. So you don't want to overlook anybody, but that's something that the coaches certainly know and the players know, and just something to be aware of heading into that last regular season game.
I did forget to mention, because it's worth noting, the Johnny Klein assist watch. John Klein sits at 12 assists still, as the Isaiah Parker goal was unassisted and Betcher's goal was assisted by Isaiah Parker. So Johnny Klein still at 12 assists on the year. Women's soccer continues to roll with 2 wins this past week. We start off with a 2-0 win at St. Joe's. It was the Abby Miller show in the 13th minute and 40th minute. The first goal was assisted by Iverson, with the 40th minute goal assisted by Sawyer and Gaby. 6th clean sheet for Purcelli. It's an important win. It's a road win. St. Joe's not very good, but you win the games you need to win, get yourself on track leading into the conference tournament. And they stayed on that track today, beating George Mason in a full 90-minute game. Weather did not affect this time around. 21st minute, Emily Gaby opened up the scoring with a very nice individual effort off of a turnover, puts it in the back of the net. And then Caroline Kelly with one of the sneakiest little goals I've seen in a long time, with a brilliant toe poke between the keeper's legs to put the game on ice. Pete Carter, what'd you guys think?
Yeah, not only that goal, that was a cheeky goal, as you called it. I actually really like the first one you mentioned, the Abby Miller goal from Halverson in the St. Joe's game. That was so much this season. We've seen them rack up these gaudy shot numbers and corners, and on paper they're dominating a game. But what Halverson did here was deliver the ball into the area with purpose, and Miller was just ready for it. She looked 100% ready. She knew where the ball was going to come, and she knew what she was going to do with it. And we just haven't seen enough of that this season. So credit to Abby Miller for having, a 2-goal game that she absolutely deserved and earned there. And they look like they're starting to click a little bit more. It seems like the level of effort is higher. The finishing is getting there. And yeah, now they've got a winning record on the season. So things are coming together, and hopefully they can end up with this 2 seed. They've got 2 games to figure that out.
It's good to get hot late. I'll be completely honest. I haven't seen a ton of women's soccer this year. Unfortunately, I missed both of these games, but I do see the highlights, and I know that now is the time you want to be getting good. That's all I got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's worth noting that in the last 4 games, the Billikens have not allowed a goal since losing to VCU 1-0. So, maybe the competition isn't the highest of the Atlantic 10 has to offer, but they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're winning games, they're getting clean sheets, and they're ramping up to the A10 tournament, as you said, Chap. Upcoming 9/21. They will have Richmond, who is 7-7-1. They're coming off a 3-0 win versus Davidson. Little fun fact about Richmond's schedule: they played VCU in an exhibition game, which is odd. They played them early in an exhibition. That was weird. I didn't think I'd see that. Leading scores: Jesse Perlman, 6 goals, 2 assists for 14 points total. TJ Anderson has 5 goals, and Molly Weirman chips in 4 goals and 5 assists on the season. They will also have Rhode Island on 9/24. So 2 teams that they definitely should beat, obviously, as we've come to expect from this team.
2 teams we should beat, but they are, number 5 and number 6 in conference. Richmond was tied with SLU and Dayton until a week ago, when they picked up their 3rd loss in 2nd place. So it's definitely something you want to solidify by beating 2, they're not top teams, but top half teams. And SLU does have that ugly loss to Duquesne on their record as well. Duquesne, who is in, who's 2 from the bottom. So there are no sure things this year, and you just hope that this, I don't know. I'm not a huge momentum guy, but it seems like the level of confidence and, team focus and togetherness is really starting to gel right now. So now is when, we all know what they're capable of. So let's hope they just turn on the Jets right now.
Yeah, I think they definitely have a shot at still getting that NCAA tournament bid via the conference tournament championship. The Billikens sit at 8-7-1 now, 6-2-0 in conference. The table for women's soccer, VCU sits top of the table, 8-0. They're going to be the team through which an NCAA tournament bid goes. Dayton sits in 2nd at 6-2. UMass 5-2-1. St. Louis 5-2. Richmond just below us at 5-3. Rhode Island, Bonaventure, Mason, LaSalle, St. Joe's, George Washington, Duquesne, Fordham, and Davidson brings up the rear at 0-6-2. Let's move on to volleyball. For as much work as they did to start off the conference season, volleyball has fallen on a little bit of hard times, Dusty Road style. They dropped 2 quick games or 2 quick matches, 0-3 to VCU, 23-25, 11-25, 20-25. Just not a very good game for the Billikens at all. Not very competitive. VCU took control of the match early, and it didn't look like the SLU had an answer or any sort of kind of comeback in them at all. They kind of just rolled over. I don't know what to say. Again, they go on and they play Davidson, a bad Davidson team. I mean, this is a team that not a bad Davidson team, but they're a team that we should beat. 5-3 in conference, 9-9 overall. So they're on par, and that you allow Davidson to come in and beat you 3-1. 25-22, 17-25, 25-27, and 11-25. So you win that first set and then drop 3 straight. that's just stuff that drives me up a wall with this team.
Yeah, and look, this this volleyball program is more your forte than
Yes.
mine. And I just feel like all season long, except for that kind of maybe the way that they started A10 with play with that win over VCU. Maybe aside from that little stretch, this team has absolutely fallen into the narrative that you've had for them all year, very predictably. And I don't know, it's kind of painful to watch because it just seems like there's such a ceiling on what they're going to do.
Yeah, I have gotten feedback from certain fans. Shout out the gentleman who I spoke with outside of practice about volleyball. He made a good point. Basically, his point was this: that I am too harsh on the volleyball team, and I'll agree with that statement. I try to not frame this as the team, but I also believe in talking about sports equally. So if I'm gonna criticize men's basketball, I'm gonna criticize women's basketball for the same kind of thing. So if I'm gonna criticize men's basketball, I'm gonna criticize volleyball for that same thing. However, volleyball is not funded in the way it needs to be. To really get over that hump where we're winning the A10 2 and 3 times every 5 years, 5 to 10 years. And that's an institutional problem. That's a Kent Miller problem. Still, it's his job to take what he has been given and work with it. But as I was informed that based on the compensation package, when Kent Miller was hired, there were 2 people that withdrew from the job pool, I guess, or the coaching pool, that their 2 top targets actually withdrew. So, yeah, I mean, could the compensation be better? Yes. Yes, it could. Does Kent Miller deserve a pass because it's not, he's not given the support that he maybe needs? You could make a case for it, but I think the institutional support, I don't think Ann got any more institutional support. I think Ann went out and worked her ass off to get donors to get the money she needed. She worked a room like nobody I've ever seen and was able to make friends like nobody I've ever seen. So, there are ways, and it sucks. Like, it sucks that Darren Hendrickson has to go out and fundraise himself, but it's the world of, smaller school athletics. So, I just want to see volleyball succeed. I would love to see the athletic department support it better. But you have to win with what you're given. And I mean, to lose to Davidson is unacceptable in my mind, because I mean, again, you want to be Davidson is so far below VCU and Dayton. So it's just not a game you can lose, especially at home. So looking at the standings for volleyball, Dayton and VCU at the top. Dayton's 9-0. They have started to run away with the conference. VCU 6-2, SLU 5-3, tied with Davidson, Duquesne, Rhode Island, George Washington, Fordham, and then George Mason at the bottom. Upcoming for the Billikens, they will play those bottom feeders in George Washington and George Mason. Like I said, George Washington sits at 2-6. George Mason sits at 1-6 in conference, and that'll be on the 22nd and 24th, respectively. Billiken sit at 12-9, as I mentioned, 5-3 in conference. Big news out of Sportport International, guys. Billiken field hockey has a conference win. This is the first conference win since 2018 when they beat LaSalle. I believe that's what it was. They beat VCU 1-0 today at 1:00. Josephina Perez scored a minute 33 into the second quarter to give the Billikens a 1-0 lead, a lead they would not relinquish. Sasha Sanders was excellent in goal for the Billikens, stopping every shot she faced, and she did face a large amount of shots. this is the first win against an above 500 team for Billiken field hockey since Fairfield on 9/27/2018, which actually I thought was probably was actually more recent than I expected. I'm not going to lie. I thought it could go back to 2005. And speaking of going back to 2005, Billikens have an opportunity to finish above last place for the first time since as far back as the A10 website goes, for records. And that's 2013-14. My best guess for the last time they actually finished above last place is 2007, when they went 2-5 in conference. So we're talking about, and I'll run through the standings to explain how it could go down. The Billikens actually have a really good chance to finish off the season on a 4-game winning streak. Looking at their schedule, they have matches with Indiana on the 22nd, who are 8-8, and they are 8-10 overall head-to-head. Their last win against Indiana, 10/27/2017, a 3-2 win. On 10/24, again, they play Central Michigan, who is 3-10 overall, and the head-to-head between the two schools is 9-14. The last win against Central Michigan was 9-10-17. So historically, the Billikens have been able to beat both of these programs. And the final game, which we will get into eventually when it comes around, is Davidson. Davidson is currently in last place in the conference. So the Billikens have a better than 500 shot to finish outside of last place for the first time since 2007.
Do it. It's exciting.
Yeah,
let's go for it.
I cannot believe I'm this excited about a team with 2 wins.
Yeah, I mean, well, what do we say coming into this season? Like, this, the coach is starting from scratch here with this program, and the only direction is up. And if we see progress, then yeah, let's see it. Let's take it.
Look, I don't want to equate. I don't want to equate. Everything comes back to Ann Cordes. I guess I have some sort of preoccupation. What are you going to do? I love Ann, and I love Ann to death. I absolutely do. I adore her. But I don't want to equate the situation with Cheryl Levick hiring Ann to hiring a field hockey coach, because again, we talk institutional support. We talk about volleyball not getting institutional support. Here's volleyball. Here's field hockey. If you're looking, it's not even close to comparable. But really, you have to for SLU field hockey to succeed in the immediate, they have got to get lucky with hiring a coach. Essentially, you have to make your best educated guess on a first-year head coach. That's the strategy that has been for the last 20 years, probably. So, if Zoe Adkins can just happen to be that coach that pulls us out of the gutter, I mean, I'm here to watch it. I'm here to enjoy it. So, the Central Michigan game will be at Sportport. I believe Davidson will be on the road, and Davidson has historically streamed games. So I don't believe, as of right now, Indiana and Central Michigan will be streamed, but I know Central Michigan will not be streamed. And I've been told that's due to connectivity issues in at Sportport International. Yeah. So before we head out, I do want to make a note on basketball. Reggie Agbeko came across my Twitter feed. Pete, did you see this?
Apparently he's tearing it up in Spain. Am I understanding this right?
Chapley?
Yeah, he's like, I can't remember what league he was playing in now that you put me on the spot, but it's like he's averaging 19 points a night and the team is undefeated or something like that.
That really doesn't surprise me, though. I mean, I always thought, like, once we got like Hassan French, like I always looked back at Reggie and thought that he was a much more like raw version of Hassan in a way, and maybe on a worse team too, I mean, Reggie really had some stinker of teams that he played on. No offense to like guys like Welmer and Crawford, and Roby.
So looking this up, it is in Spain. It's apparently Spain's third division, if I understand this correctly.
Still counts.
It still counts. It's still part of the FIBA Europe, confederation. So, but yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm assuming it's a system where there is promotion and relegation. I could be wrong on that. So, hopefully he keeps his strong play going, and maybe this is a club on the rise.
All right, guys. Well, I'll actually I'll leave it to both of you. Pete, any last thoughts on anything we talked about?
Yeah, read Carter Chapley's Manifesto. It's 5 parts. It's great. I've read the whole thing
really
and gone back and referred to it again, in order to prepare for some of this. And whether you've been in a coma for a year and you're just coming back to this raw and want to know everything you possibly can, or if you're a fan who lives and dies, reads message boards, reads everything Stu Durando puts out, listens to our show, tries to get as much information in your head as you can, no matter what level that you're at in your fanhood. This is a valuable primer on this upcoming season. So check it out, and we'll definitely tweet it out too. I know Zach said how to find it, but we'll definitely give some links as well.
Yeah, I as much as we get, we do get a lot of. I mean, people. I've had people tell me that they enjoy the podcast and the content, the sheer amount of content. Not even that it's good, just that we do it. Like,
yeah,
like
I get that.
Like,
too.
I want to,
Yeah.
like that's basically what I'm saying about Chapley. I mean, even if his writing was terrible, and it's definitely good, the amount of content that he puts out is far and away bigger than anything we've seen. We're in a golden era of like the amount of coverage we can have.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it'll ever get better as far as like games being on TV, unless we start like going to Final Fours and then we're on, the Deuce every night. But like, right now with writing and listening, or reading and listening, this is the most we've ever had. I mean, at most before we've had Post Dispatch and Rivals or whatever. Now we have, I get to sit here and talk in your ear for an hour and a half. But sorry, you had to listen to that. Chapley, any last thoughts on anything we talked about?
Billiken basketball season's 9 days away now. We're getting close.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I'll give it to you guys first. Any game that isn't shown with a TV obligation will have a TV obligation. So you'll be able to watch every one of the Billiken games this year on a streaming platform. The one that's missing from right now is I believe it's still called Bally Sports. So expect my guy Danny Mack back on the mic, I'd assume. With them, so it's 9 days away, and I'm starting to get excited.
Yeah, I just want to remind people, like, if you haven't subscribed to ESPN Plus yet,
it's so worth it.
It's even more worth it now. Says the Canadian, because the entire NHL season is on ESPN Plus now. So I mean, even if you were just going to get it for Billiken basketball, I mean, get into hockey too, and you save yourself some money. It's worth it.
It's the other slew sports too. I mean,
Yes.
I'm regularly seeing men's and women's soccer games on there that I otherwise never would have gotten to see, and I would be just relying on Twitter highlights or whatever they throw out on their accounts. So just slew sports in general, not to mention, all the hockey that's on there now, the occasional MLB game, usually one a night or whatever. It's great. It's $4.99 a month and $50 for a year. The price hasn't gone up in the few years since it's debuted. So I know we all are at the point of now subscribing to like 11 different streaming services, but this is one that's well worth the money year round.
You can package it with the Disney Plus stuff if you're into Marvel, like I am.
That too.
If you have kids, that's great. No, and just to be able to watch, like, I think you can see basically every other A10 game
No.
that isn't
Yeah.
nationally broadcast. Like
That's
you can
right.
keep up with the rest of the league. So it's so worth it.
Yep.
Well, all right, guys. Don't forget to follow us at Midtown Mad Pod, at Peter is a tweeter, at Zach Miller MMP with no H or K, and then at Chapley Media. Yeah, Chapley's on the take from Disney over there with his Yoda figure behind him. But
Looks like a Billiken.
Yeah, a little bit. I'll give you that. Yeah, follow us on the social, like and subscribe. Go check out the Larry Hughes interview. If you haven't already, what are you doing to listen to this before that Larry Hughes interview? Thanks everybody for listening. Thank you, Carter, for joining us, for taking an hour and a half. Talk to you guys soon. Go Bills.
Go Bills.